pray over us real quick before we get started? Heavenly Father, we thank you for today, and we thank you for all that you've given to us. Lord, we thank you for your provision, your greatness. And Lord, we thank you for a wonderfully designed body that allows us to heal and to optimize ourselves. And your word calls us to make our bodies a temple of the Holy Spirit. And Lord, we pray that we can learn some things tonight, apply them to our lives, and that helps us become better instruments of yours. And it's in your holy name we pray. Amen. All right, so there are spiritual dimensions. I mean, so let's back up beyond Christianity. Look at all the different religions of the world. They agree on just one thing, all of them, fasting. Right? And so there's a spiritual dimension to this. Now, as Christians, we believe that, God calls us to fast, and the Bible is very clear about that. And so there are a lot of spiritual dimensions to being able to do this. And one of them, I think, is really to be able to slow your body down, to exercise self-control, and to be able to focus more clearly on the Word and your relationship with God. And so there are plenty of things that we can fast. We're going to talk principally about fasting from food tonight, but you can do a sugar fast, you can do a dessert fast, you can do an alcohol fast, you can do a internet fast or a social media fast. All these different things have the same principle, because when your body is excited, it produces a hormone called dopamine. And that dopamine brings you back for more, or whatever it is that's giving you the dopamine hit. And so putting something in your mouth is giving you that dopamine hit. Your body will naturally react to that through the hormone system that God's given us to design. And so I talked about different kinds of fasts: food fast, carbohydrates fast, sweet fasts, alcohol, social media. But because the Bible talks about fasting in the context of food, that's principally what we're going to talk about tonight. So some things to consider from a spiritual perspective: what to substitute or incorporate into your fast from a spiritual perspective. Now, if you overconsume anything, it's probably something that you'll naturally say, yeah, I do too much of that. And so maybe God's calling you, and you got to pray about this. I should also say what I'm transmitting tonight is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, talk to your healthcare practitioner, and make sure that what you're doing is consistent with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about water fasts. I'm going to talk about extended water fasts, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about dry fast too. And dry fast is just what it sounds like: nothing. You don't eat anything, you don't drink anything, you don't brush your teeth, you don't shower. You do those for much shorter periods of time, but we'll talk a little bit about the scientific benefit of what your body does when you're doing those things. And so it's the spiritual context. We talk a little bit about shifting your mindset from work to worship, to drown out and overwhelm the internal negative speak with worship, right? And so it's one way a dimension for us to be able to focus on this. Matthew 4:4, man does not live by bread alone. And so the idea that there's something behind just feeding ourselves, and we can feed ourselves with Scripture, incorporate spiritual growth plan into fasting. For example, if you're struggling with some spiritual dimension of your life, you can incorporate the fasting in your prayer discipline to say, I want to get better at this. Do you have difficulty with, generosity? Right, so you can incorporate that into your prayer life and also into, kind of focusing on your fasting. And so we talk a little bit about dependence, discipline, warfare, repentance. There are a few different things to think through, whether it's overdependence on something, spiritual warfare in some dimension, discipline, and just general repentance. Now, I'm going to shift gears, and I'm going to start talking a little bit about the health benefits. And you guys can ask questions as we go. We are recording this for the benefit of others, and so we've got a microphone in the back. And so if you have a question, just raise your hand, and I'd ask that you'd wait a second so that we can capture your question in the recording. Over 93% of all Americans are metabolically unhealthy, right? 93%. There are multiple studies leading up to this. And what does that mean? It's diagnosed in a lot of different ways. And I should back out and talk just a little bit about medicine, right? Western medicine's really good at emergent care and really good at acute care. What's that mean? You get hit by a bus and you need to go to a hospital, it's the right thing to do. Good to see your doctors and nurses and all that. If you break a bone, have some acute care issue, get those things taken care of. What Western medicine is not good at is chronic care. And so we've got a system, and I won't go too far down this rabbit hole, but we've got a system that treats symptoms, right? So when you go in and you say, hey doc, I got this thing in my low back and it's hurting and it won't go away and all that sort of stuff, your doctor's going to give you something to treat the symptom. Probably going to give you something to ease the pain or do something like that. And so part of my own personal journey, I've got some right hip issues, and I went into the doc and he said, I'm going to give you a cortisol shot. And I decided not to do that. I said, I'm pretty sure the pain here is telling me something, and I wanted to get to the root cause of it. And so part of my training in the military, when I first started out in the military back in the early 1980s, I was trained as an electronics technician, vacuum tubes, transistors, diodes, all that sort of stuff. And we had to troubleshoot things back then down to the root cause, because you had to replace the component so that the piece of machinery could work again. And so this idea of like root cause analysis is kind of in my mind. But multiple reasons for 93% of Americans being metabolically unhealthy. I would probably characterize the top couple things as overconsumption of sugar, starch, vegetable oils, and when I say vegetable oils, I'm talking ultra-processed oils like canola oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil. We can talk about that separately, but food is a fuel for your body, and when you consume things that are not good for your body, then that ends up getting some sort of a metabolic control over your body. High fructose corn syrup, lack of exercise, snacking all day long, like we all grew up. 3 meals a day, right? Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I'm sure every single one of you has heard that before. Did you know that was a marketing slogan for breakfast cereals? Like, breakfast is not the most important meal of the day, and we're going to talk a little bit about fasting and what you can do to fuel your body properly. One of the doctors that I listen to, I've probably read now 160, 170 books on metabolic healing and cellular healing and flexibility and all these sorts of things. I didn't go past 10th grade biology, and I find it interesting at this season of my life that I'm reading more about biology than I ever have in my life. And I've learned a lot of stuff as a result of that, but probably the single biggest thing I've learned about how to fuel the cells in your body, which is your body, is through whole food. And it's through natural stuff and not the environmental toxins and all the other stuff that we get. So when damage happens to your body through a variety of different insults and reasons for those, they typically damage your body at the cellular level. So I'm getting around to why fasting is important, so indulge me for just a second. Damage at the cellular level affects your organs, it affects just your body's ability to perform. But when you get into a deep level of fasting, that fasting will actually trigger a phenomenon called autophagy, or autophagy, some people say. And this idea of autophagy is a simple one. If you take it to its Greek root, it means self-eating. And so when you fast your body, you make it select fat over sugar. Because when you're sticking things in your mouth, almost anything, carbohydrate-wise, with the exception of good fats and protein, almost everything that goes into your mouth gets turned into sugar. If it's carbohydrate, simple or complex carbohydrate. And so your body will prefer, come on up ladies, grab a seat. So your body will prefer sugar over fat. And so when you try to define like what is metabolic flexibility, it means that your body can burn different kinds of fuels and it can shift between one and the other. But if you're feeding your body sugar all the time, your body's going to prefer the sugar, and it's not going to shift to burning fat. And so when you put something in your mouth, anything, it spikes an insulin response. Insulin's a hormone that tells your body to store fat. And so if you're having trouble with weight, for example, stop putting stuff in your mouth all the time. Like, because every time you put something in your mouth, whether it's an almond or like whatever it is, and I spent most of my adult life thinking you were supposed to snack through the day, that was good for you, right? Only to get to the point that I discovered that's not good for you, right? And so, and when your body triggers that insulin response, it stores the sugar as fat in your body, and your body doesn't prefer to eat the fat. But when you trigger autophagy, when you get into a fasted state, your body will then begin to prefer the fat, which, by the way, is where most of the environmental toxins in your body reside, because they're fat soluble. And so when your body absorbs a toxin, whatever it might be, let's just say it's mold. A lot of us are exposed to mold or Lyme disease or something like that. Those are toxins that are absorbed into your fat. The only way to take that out that you can control is through autophagy, and the only way you control autophagy is through fasting. The other way your body gets rid of damaged cells is through a process called apoptosis, but you don't control that. So we don't really talk a whole lot about apoptosis when it comes to this stuff. I know it's a lot of biologically technical terms, but they're important ones, because I'm going to back out and just make the idea of why you fast as simple as possible, but I do need to go down a couple rabbit holes first. I've got a doctor friend of mine who's in the functional health, natural healing environment, and he has a saying, Dr. Dan Pompa, and his saying is, if you fix the cell, you get well. And it's a very simple idea, very hard to do. But if you treat your food like it's medicine, which it is, whole foods are medicine, and then you cycle into and out of autophagy, where you're taking out the cellular damage, and then you're restoring the cellular structure after you take that out, then your body takes out the trash, rebuilds with new stuff. Takes out the trash again, rebuilds with new stuff. And most everything in our lives that God designed our bodies to do is based on some sort of a rhythm. We're never in steady state. Whether it's your circadian rhythm, the sun rises, the sun sets. The sun rises again, the sun sets again. I mean, God designed all these rhythms for us to be healthy, and because it's not good to be on all the time. You're designed to be asleep for part of the day, you're designed to be awake for part of the day. Part of that is to be in sync with your circadian rhythm so that you can optimize your body's hormonal responses to all the stuff that's going on in your life. All right, so let me step back a little bit and say, sometimes we call fasting diet restriction or compressing your eating window. And there's like a million different ways to fast. You can fast for 8 hours, you can fast for 10 hours, you can fast for 12 hours, you can fast for 16, 18. There's an extreme form of intermittent fasting called 1 meal a day, or OMAD, 1 meal a day. And OMAD feasting, or OMAD fasting and feasting, is essentially where you don't eat anything for 23 hours, and then you eat everything that you're going to consume for the day in a 1 hour window. It's a little extreme, more than most people want to do. I fasted today for 18 hours, and I broke my fast about an hour and 15 minutes ago. It's because that's what I do, and that's what makes me feel good. And I'll talk a little bit more about feeling some of those things. Ancestrally speaking, back in the hunter-gatherer days, they didn't have refrigerators, they didn't have fast food, they didn't have all the things. Our ancestors ate when food was available, and they didn't eat when food wasn't available, right? And so this is the way that God designed us. These modern luxuries that we enjoy, having a modern kitchen and refrigerator and a freezer and all the stuff, and you can order vegetables from any part of the world and go in the grocery store and they all look great because they've been sprayed with wax and paraffin and all this other stuff. And so just be mindful of the fact that all these modern conveniences, in addition to modern levels of toxicity in our environment, whether they're herbicides, pesticides, glyphosate, mold, lime, all these things are maybe lime, I don't know how old lime is, but a lot of these things are fairly modern features of what's in our food supply, not to mention water supply and other things like that. So the point is, you're not made to eat constantly, not from sunrise to sunset. Bible references a couple times about the necessity to fast. Matthew 16:6, Jesus said, when you fast. He did not say if you fast. We're all called to fast. Jesus fasted for 40 days, recorded in the Bible. So did Moses, so did Elijah. Fasting's fairly extreme. And I will tell you, I've done enough research on this stuff and read enough books about it, that I've told my wife that if I ever got diagnosed with cancer, cancer is a senescent cell structure, and so you've got damaged and broken cells. Personally, I would fast for 20 to 40 days, water fast. And I have a friend of mine whose wife had breast cancer. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. Oncologists wanted to get her into a protocol right away, which is the standard response in American medicine, Western medicine. And he said, no, we're going to pray about this and we're going to go home and fast. And she fasted for 27 days, water fast. And they went back in to have her breast cancer imaged, and they couldn't find the cancer. And so, when your body begins to eat itself, it eats the bad stuff first. God's given you the intelligence in your body for your body to prioritize those things that are most harmful to you in your body. So when you fast for a couple days, I was just talking to a guy after church on Sunday. His son's a friend of our youngest son's, and he goes, I just finished a 7-day water fast. And I was like, amazing. How'd you feel? He goes, great. I had this thing in my low back over here and this thing over here. And he goes, I don't feel the pain anymore. And so your body has this just natural ability to heal itself when you do these things. Each of the Jesus, Moses, Elijah, they all fasted for the purpose of deep communion with God, right? To get aligned. Jesus fasted to resist temptation. You remember he was being tempted by the devil, and Moses fasted for spiritual revelation. Elijah fasted for strength and guidance. Daniel fasted for clarity and understanding. Esther fasted for courage and deliverance, and Paul fasted for spiritual transformation. All these are recorded in the Bible. These are the purposes from a spiritual perspective for why we should have fasting as part of our lifestyle. Again, spiritual benefits, put your flesh in check when you deprive it, gives you more exercise of self-control. Obedience to God's word enhances spiritual clarity and focus, builds inner strength and discipline, promotes humility and a dependence on God, helps seek divine guidance and direction, strengthens faith, and deepens spiritual dependencies. When it comes to physiological reasons to fast, simply put, when your body's energy is not focused on digestion, like when we're eating all the time, your body's digesting all the time, right? And so if you're eating all the way up until the time you go to bed, guess what? You go to sleep and your body's digesting food. Do you know what your body does when it's not digesting food? It turns its healing energy away from digestion to whatever ails you. Right? And so if you're in a fasted state and you give your body the opportunity to turn its innate intelligence to whatever your problem is, in my case I had some right hip problems, some low back problems, a little bit of brain fog, and fasting just helped me be able to fix some of those things. And by the way, I wasn't in great shape when I was 55. That was 6 years ago. I feel like 300 to 400% better right now than I did 6 years ago. And I could easily, some of you are in my age range, some younger, some older, but you get to a point in your life where you kind of go, I could have gone, I'm 55. It's all downhill from here, and you just kind of give up on it. And I want to encourage you to say, fasting could become part of a protocol to be helpful to you. All right. So cellular healing is activated by fasting, which triggers autophagy, which begins the healing process. Fasting's good for performance, longevity, detoxification, cellular healing, and insulin control. And so these are all the things that your body has to work on. And so we do have a couple of kids in the audience, and what I would say is that as a general rule, I don't hear many authorities talk about kids fasting. You're probably too young to fast, right? And everybody's got a little different story. I would encourage you to talk to your healthcare practitioner about this stuff. But if your doctor doesn't know about fasting, then he or she might not see the benefit in doing it. So, get smart on it yourself. And I can do, I'll talk to Pastor Sam, and I'll put together a reading list if you want to pick up a couple of books or articles, read about those things. How to fast. So there are basically two kinds of fast as it relates to food. Water only and a dry fast. And so the water only fast is just as the name sounds. Now I'll tell you, I cheat a little bit because I love my coffee, and I'll drink black coffee in the morning. And my wife, for a long time, put half and half in her coffee, but found that half and half broke her fast. But she figured out that heavy whipping cream does not break her fast because it's a fat. So it doesn't spike your insulin, doesn't break your fast. So if you want to have a little cheat while you're doing your water fast, have a cup of black coffee or have 5, whatever floats your caffeine boat. But the point is, there are things that we can do to encourage your body to get into autophagy and stay in autophagy. The point in the things that break your fast, not everything's going to break your fast the way it'd break mine. So you might be able to put something in your mouth and not break your fast. Generally speaking, it's something very low calorie. And it's typically something that's fat, like an olive, or a tablespoon of an oil called a multi-chain triglyceride oil, which is really good for your brain. It's really good for your ketone production. We'll talk a little bit about ketones in a second. So, water only fast, and you need to hydrate well. By the way, when you hydrate, you need to put salt in your water, some electrolytes in your water. One of the deficiencies that your body will wrestle with when you're fasted is having enough salt and electrolytes. So we use a product called Element, and their website's like drinklmnt.com. And they're sugar-free, they're, super low calorie. It's like 2 calories or something like that. You just snip one of those things open, put it in the water and stir it up, and that'll give you good electrolyte balance. Because your body is an electrical circuit. Dry fast, as the name implies, can't eat or drink anything, shouldn't shower, shouldn't brush your teeth. So if you're going to be a little stinky, you might want to do it on the weekend when you're away from civilization. But you can also use a dry fast to cap off an extended fast. So when your body's in autophagy, say you're doing a 3-day water fast, you might decide that I want my 4th day to be a dry fast. And so you go from a 3-day water fast, and that'll ramp up the autophagy that much more. But I would consult with your doctor on the dry fast in particular. All the reading that I've done suggests that you shouldn't dry fast for more than 24 hours, because then your body has some functioning that'll reduce over time. All right, so how do you do it? What's the practice? Let me just show of hands. Who in here's fasted before? Like half of you, maybe a little more, 60%. So what I find is most useful in my coaching of my friends that have tried to do some of the stuff is that you just work up to doing a full day fast. And how do you do that? You wake up in the morning and you skip breakfast, or you eat breakfast at 9 or 10 instead of 6 or 7, right? And then you push that out and you try not to eat lunch. And then you push out lunch and you eat lunch later at 2 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon. By this point, you should be compressing your eating window pretty small. I generally follow an 18-6 intermittent fasting schedule, 18 hours a day. So like I have a cup of tea at night before I go to bed or something like that. And then I go to bed, I sleep, I wake up, I don't eat anything. And you know, interestingly, your body becomes accustomed to this, and my body yearns it. Like I couldn't stop fasting now that I have incorporated this into my lifestyle because my body feels good when I do it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about fat adaptation and talk a little bit about ketosis because this is also another important feature of fasting and the benefits for your body. So your body either eats sugar or it eats fat. When you fast, you make it eat fat, right? So this is the autophagy. This is cleaning out the toxins and all those sorts of things. So it takes your body, if you begin to make this a practice in your life, it takes your body about 3 weeks to become fat adapted, something like that. And then once your body becomes fat adapted, it begins to go into ketosis. And ketosis, ketone bodies are little energy sources that your liver makes. And so you've got to be into fat adaptation in order to get into a keto adaptation, and then your body's producing ketones. So working up, and there's no, the point there is that there's no one right way to fast. And I would just say, listen to your body as you begin to do it. At first, it's going to seem so weird, and you're going to be like, what in the world was I thinking? What am I doing? And then over time, you know, it doesn't take too long. You know, maybe a couple months, you just like, man, this just makes me feel like $1 million. I'm never going to go back. And so back to this principle of cycling, you don't want to fast every day. You don't want to feast every day. Cycle in and out, right? And so one of the more popular models is called a 5-1-1 model, and that's 5 days of intermittent fasting, followed by 1 day of feasting, followed by 1 day of fasting, right? So what does that look like? If you, like me, I tend to fast from dinner to dinner, and so that's my 24-hour window. You can fast from breakfast to breakfast, doesn't really matter. I think it's probably a little more beneficial to fast from breakfast to breakfast on a 24 than it is from dinner to dinner, simply because your body will have cleared out all its digestive work before you go to bed. And then when you stack being fasted on top of sleep, your body goes into like overdrive. And so it cleans up more while your body's sleeping. And so if you're fasted and sleeping both at the same time, there's additional benefit. But this, whether it's a 5-1-1, a 4-2-1, like there's a bunch of different ways to do it. 4-2-1 would be intermittent fasting for 4 days, feasting for 2 days, and then doing a 24-hour water fast. Now I'm just going to tell you, if you do dinner to dinner like I do, adding an extra 12 hours onto 24 is no big deal. So by the time you get to 24 hours, so you go from dinner to dinner, say you eat at 8 o'clock at night, which is probably too late, but you go from 8 to 8, and then you sleep on it. You're 24 hours fasted. You're deep into autophagy, and now you're getting 12 hours of sleep or 8 hours of sleep in that next 12-hour window, and you're getting a 36-hour water fast, which is super beneficial for your body. And so I've heard it said, and I actually believe this for a lot of my life. I'm like, I'm not gonna fast. I'm not gonna skip food in order to get skinny. You know, I'm just not going to starve myself. Well, you're not starving yourself. If you're fasted for up to a certain number of days, your body's not in a starvation mode. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that somewhere around 24 hours fasted, your body begins to produce growth hormone. Why does it do that? Well, when you lose muscle, that's called sarcopenia for those of us that are getting to that age of being worried about sarcopenia. Being in a fasted state produces growth hormones so that you don't have muscle atrophy. right? And so God's designed these things into the system. So if somebody says, hey, you're going to starve yourself, you're going to lose muscle, the science is very clear that the growth hormone comes in. The other cool thing is somewhere between 2 and 3 days of being water fasted, your body begins to produce growth hormone. Not growth hormone, stem cells. So stem cells production starts. So you get growth hormone, you get stem cell production, people pay tens of thousands of dollars to fly to Mexico and get a couple of shots of stem cells. Like, you can go home and fast and save your $20,000, you know. So these things are useful. So let's talk a little bit about autophagy again. So when you're fasted, so let's say you start fasting today, autophagy rises on an exponential curve. And so it starts out a little slow, and it really starts to rise, depends on your personal physiology, somewhere between 12 and 18 hours, the autophagy curve starts going up. And then at some point, it's vertical, and it's going straight up. And that's between day 1 and day 3. And at day 3, autophagy kind of plateaus. You're not going to get much more out of it, which is why a 5-day water fast is better than a 3-day water fast, because you get to maximum autophagy, and now you're in 2 days worth of full-blown maximum autophagy. Your body is like cleaning stuff up. And so there's a doctor by the name of Annette Bosworth. She goes by Dr. Boz. She's popular on YouTube. She has this thing she calls the Dr. Boz ratio. If you're measuring ketones and you're measuring blood sugar. So when you're fasted, your blood sugar should go down, right? And if you take your blood sugar number and you divide it by your ketone level, that gives you a number of something less than 100. Right? And the lower it gets, the deeper into autophagy you are. And her rule of thumb by using the Dr. Boz ratio is if your Dr. Boz ratio is less than 20, then your body's in full-blown autophagy. So Kate and I just did in January, we did about a 6-day water fast, and my Dr. Boz ratio was around 9. Or 10, which is like deep autophagy. You're getting all that good cellular cleaning. All right, so fasting is important, feasting is important, but when you do a long duration fast, how you break your fast matters. And so the rule of thumb that I've heard many doctors repeat is that if you fast for some period of time, water fast, then your refeeding window needs to be half the duration of your fast. So if you fast for 3 days and then you break your fast, you should spend the next day and a half breaking your fast. What does that mean? So when your body's fasted, you've got enzymes in your gut that help digest the food. Your enzymatic production goes down, because you're not digesting anything, right? And so what you don't want to do is stick a T-bone down your throat, right at coming out of a fast, because your body's is gonna have trouble, wrestling with that. So what do you break a fast with? Soft things, gentle things, easy to digest things. One of our favorites is bone broth. Get you some bone broth, either make it at home or go to the grocery store and buy some. Some people like to heat it up. I like it cold. Doesn't really matter to me. But I'll do bone broth. I'll do hard-boiled eggs. I can do scrambled eggs. Things that are going to, just think about it as you want to do something that's going to be easy for your body to digest. And then you work your way back up to the T-bone, right? But you don't jump to that right out of the gate. I've heard at least 6 or 7 doctors, oncologists, say that if a person does a water fast for 5 days once a year, your probability of getting cancer goes down 95%. Let that sink in for a second. And that's why I've told Kate, if I ever got diagnosed with cancer, the first thing I'd do is like a super long fast. And that's it. And so And these are, like there are a lot of very reputable doctors. And so if you've got a loved one with cancer in your family, or you're wrestling with it yourself, couple of titles. There's the Metabolic Guide to Cancer is written by a doctor by the name of Nisha Winters. She's one of the authorities on this. There's a nephrologist by the name of Dr. Jason Fung who's written a book called The Cancer Code. And he's got a series of books that kind of plays off the same title. One's the obesity code, one's the cancer code, so on and so forth. Type 2 diabetes. You got a loved one in your family with type 2 diabetes? For years we said you couldn't reverse type 2 diabetes. Now it is commonly understood in the scientific community that you can eradicate type 2 diabetes. And I don't know how I never got diagnosed with prediabetes even, but when I started on this when I was 55, I weigh about 175 pounds now, 173, 175 pounds. I was almost 210 pounds. And so I was carrying some extra weight. And how I was never diagnosed with prediabetes, I don't know, because my blood sugar was high and all the things. I was on cholesterol and heart meds. I don't take any of that stuff anymore. And so God's healed my body by the way that I fuel it and by the way that I've folded fasting into doing that. All right, so we talked about cycling. I want to talk about a little bit about so in biology, there are all these mechanisms of action, like what causes this hormone to talk to that hormone or this thing to do that thing. And so we've talked about autophagy and the importance of autophagy when you fast and your body gets into this fasted state. Autophagy has these wonderful healing components, right? But you don't want to just take it out. You got to break your fast and you need to refeed yourself. And so when you refeed yourself, you want to trigger what's called mTOR. And mTOR stands for mechanistic target of rapamycin. At some point it's also been called mammalian target of rapamycin. mTOR is what bodybuilders are in all the time. You get those big boys out there that just want to throw 400 pounds around on the weight bench. They're eating all the time, protein all the time, eat, right? And so what science has discovered is that in order to trigger mTOR in your body, you need to have at least 30 grams of protein, right? Less than 30 grams, give or take, is not going to trigger mTOR. So when you break your fast and you want to begin the refeeding, you need to make sure you're getting 30, 40 grams of protein, all right? And so what that does is it breaks the autophagy, and then it begins this rebuilding season. So think about it as you're taking all the cellular garbage out, and then you break your fast. Now you're feeding your body to create new cells. And God does that beautifully through, producing growth hormone, producing stem cells, producing new cellular matrix in your body. All right. I don't know. I used to watch bodybuilders a lot when I was a kid because, what 16-year-old boy doesn't want really big arms? But a lot of those guys who were kind of my heroes back then, I've paid attention to this as I've gotten older, but they die between 60 and 50, 60, 70 years. You go look up some bodybuilder that you knew back from the 70s or 80s or whatever, and these guys drop dead at 55. It's because their bodies are in mTOR persistently for decades of their lives. They're constantly build, and they're not breaking down and building and breaking down and building. And so, not that simple, but I found that to be kind of an interesting data point. Too much of either of those things is bad for us, mTOR or autophagy. So at 12 hours, we reduce insulin, we stabilize blood sugar, we begin burning fat, and we begin producing ketones. We talked a little bit about fat adaptation and ketone adaptation. At 18 hours, autophagy starts, which is fat loss and detoxification. And then your mental clarity improves. I talked a little bit about the ketone bodies crossing the blood-brain barrier, getting into your brain. And thanks for coming. Getting into your brain. Well, the other thing that your body produces, which is a hormone, is called BDNF. which is brain-derived neurotropic factor. So your body begins to produce all these things, and now all of a sudden you're more alert and you have more cognitive function. 24 to 72 hours, autophagy continues. Remember, it goes up to day 3, it plateaus, and then you get benefits for a couple days. Produces growth hormone, stem cells, immune system regeneration, and gut tissue regeneration. So I don't know, if anybody's ever had intestinal bowel syndrome or something else that's causing you some gastrointestinal pain. The cells, all the cells in your body have life cycles of different durations. The cells in your gut live for 3 days. Then they die and they regenerate. And so if you do a 3-day water fast, like if you've got a symptom like persistent diarrhea, and you're just like, I can't figure it out, can't get rid of it. You do a 3-day water fast, I guarantee you'll have, regular bowel movement coming out of that. Now, when you fast, you're not gonna, because the quality of your bowel movement's important. But when you fast, you got nothing in your gut, so you're not gonna be moving much of anything other than just kind of drinking water and peeing all that out. But these are all important things. But you want a good gut reset? 3-day water fast. You want to supersize it? Make it a 5-day water fast. I guarantee you'll come out of the other side of that and you're going to go, wow, everything's working better. So how to feast? The rule of thumb is eat clean whole foods. 100 years ago, we didn't have all these ultra-processed foods. Crisco, I think, was created in 1890, right? And kind of became a thing. And if you're old enough, you had some when we were kids, right? But the seed oil, so in science, there's this idea of causation and correlation, right? Correlation means two things happen at the same time, seemingly connected, but I can't determine its cause, right? Causation means I can determine the cause of one thing happening and the other thing happening with it, right? And so one of the things that's super interesting to me is that when you lay out a line of the growth of processed seed oils, and you lay that next to a line over time, like a 100-year window, say from 1900 to 2000, obesity rises in our country at the same level as the rise in processed seed oil consumption. So Dr. Kate Shanahan, she spells her Kate with a C, has written a bunch of books about this, but she's identified the worst of the seed oils as what she calls the hateful eight. And I don't have them all memorized. You can Google it. Thanks for coming. Corn oil, canola oil, cottonseed oil, grapeseed oil, soy, safflower, sunflower. If you got those in your kitchen, I would recommend you go home and throw them out. Right? Vegetable oils in general. And what's good? Cook with butter, cook with ghee, cook with extra virgin olive oil, cook with coconut oil, cook with macadamia nut oil. All have different flash points, all good for different ways. But get those things out of your diet so that when you fast, you're cleaning out your cellular garbage, and when you feast, you're actually bringing food into your body that can make all this stuff optimal, and then you feel better, right? And so the rule of thumb on the oils, I didn't know this. You can Google this, go on YouTube and watch, but when you look at some of these seed oils, they're like superheated to like 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. That makes the oil rancid. And then they bleach them, and then they filter them, and then they reheat them again, and then by the time you get it, and so do yourself a little taste test. Get extra virgin olive oil and get canola oil next to each other on the kitchen counter. Take a tablespoon of each. Which one actually has a flavor and a body? The extra virgin olive oil's got that little spicy zing to it. It's good. Canola oil just tastes like, meh, what did I just put in my mouth? Anyway. If you are refeeding after a 24-plus hour fast, be mindful that your stomach will be slow to digest what you feed it. We talked about that. A gentle to digest refeeding protocol is best. Why does autophagy work? And I'm getting towards the end, and then we can open up to questions if you care to ask any. God designed your body. Like, God designed your body to heal itself. And the simple idea behind some of this is that all we have to do is remove the interference that's keeping our body from healing itself. And most of the interferences in the standard American life start with the standard American diet, all the crap. I mean, like, you really don't want to sit next to me in a restaurant, because I'll work the waiter over, and then I do leave a good tip. But, but I'm like, I want it the way I want it. Like, where was I? We lived down around St. Michael's. So we were in, I think, C Street. And I was like, I'd like my burger with no bun, and I'd like a side of bacon. And and they're like, okay, all right, let's get, but these are good protein, good fat source. We had the food pyramid, by the way, was upside down for about 50 years. And we were telling everybody when I was a kid, don't drink whole milk, drink skim milk. Like, fat's good for you. Fat's really good for you. And fat, by the way, doesn't make you fat. It's the sugar and the starch that make you fat. Most modern toxins are fat soluble. What does that mean? That means they absorb in your body at the cellular level. And you can't get them out of there by taking a shower or doing a sauna or like whatever else. I mean, like, you got to do something to trigger autophagy, or your body needs to take it out through apoptosis, which I said earlier you don't control. Toxins include, but are not limited to, heavy metals, herbicides, pesticides, glyphosate, which is Roundup, right? I mean, that was derived from Agent Orange in Vietnam. We were carpet bombing the Vietnamese with Agent Orange, and so we stopped doing that at the end of the war, and then we said, well, we got a chemical, we got to figure out what to do with it. And so we're using it on our crops, and we're using it on our grass and on our lawn. Get rid of those things to the extent you can. Microplastics is another big modern thing. I've heard it said that the average American now consumes up to a credit card's worth of microplastics a week in your body. And so we're like, be careful where you get your water. Drink it from a clean source. Don't drink it out of a plastic bottle to the extent you can avoid doing that. And then Dan, so this Dr. Dan Pompa, a buddy of mine, he's on YouTube a lot. Anyway, he has this metaphor he calls the toxic bucket. Now, each of us gets a bucket. And just play along with me here with metaphor. We all get a bucket when we're little. Your bucket starts filling up. You're eating crap and you're doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing, lots of sugar. And by the way, you got fluoride in your water and you got mercury in your pipes and like whatever else. And so over the course of your lifetime, your toxic bucket fills. And it manifests itself in a bunch of different ways. Maybe you get heavy. Maybe you get some pains, maybe your brain fog sets in, like there are a bunch of different symptoms that present themselves. But then your body gets to the point where your toxic bucket is full. And when your toxic bucket is full, metaphorically, it spills over into the rest of your body. And you wake up and you're just like, I don't know how I got here. Don't know how I'm getting out of here. That's where I was when I was 55. So my toxic bucket was full when I was 55. And so what I would tell you is by embracing a lot of these principles in fasting and clean eating, you can turn all that stuff back around. And so we should all be able to live. We've all got different genes, right? And people talk like about my genetic expression is X, Y, or Z. So there's the genes that your parents gave you, and then there's the epigenetic response to certain things. And so when you consume things or when you absorb toxins in your skin or you do all these other things, that will trigger an epigenetic response. The epigenetic response is controllable And fasting is one of the ways to help you control it. Your genetic response you can't control. But I tell you, your epigenetic response from all the reading I've done is far more powerful than your genetic response. All right. Coming in for a landing. God designed our bodies to fast. Jesus told us to fast. There is great spiritual, physical, and biological benefit to incorporating fasting into your life. Choose a fasting approach that suits your needs and God's purpose for you. Be prayerful about this, right? Consider fasting as a very sharp tool. It's overused by some people. So when I first started to fast and I didn't feel well and I was almost 210 pounds, I was like, giddy up, man, this is working. And I lost in the course of probably 5 months. I got down to 157 as a 56-year-old, and I hadn't been 157 since I was 18, 17, right? And so it's a sharp tool, and it works. And I had to find that right balance to get up to what I consider to be my ideal weight, and that's just from a health perspective. And because we've got a bunch of ladies in here, I'm going to talk real briefly. I'm not an expert in this at all, but there are a couple of great books out there, resources. One is Megan Ramos wrote a book called Intermittent Fasting for Women. And then Dr. Mindy Pelz wrote a book called Fast Like a Girl. And so we've actually, Kate and I have had the opportunity to meet a bunch of these people. And so had dinner with Dr. Mindy and her husband, Sequoia, in Washington a couple of years ago. Because of your hormone cycle, like women are just more complicated than men when it comes to fasting. And that's not going to be earth-shattering news. Women are more complicated than men in a lot of different ways. Is that what you're laughing about? Men are more complicated. I don't know. So, but the important thing to remember is, like, if you're a woman who's still cycling, you need to be informed by some of Dr. Mindy's work or Megan Ramos's work. There are certain times during your period that you don't want to fast. So you don't want to just pick a day, go, I'm going to fast for 3 days or whatever it is. And then as women approach menopause and get beyond, they're more hormonally like men, right? And so the rules change depending on where you are in your season of life as a woman, is my point. Men, you guys are the same from the time you're 20 until, you're 90. There's not going to be a whole lot of difference in how you fast. And so this is really important stuff because, Kate and I started to fast and she was unaware of that. I was unaware of this. And she was trying to hang with me, doing what I was doing, because we've done a lot of this stuff together. And I got to tell you, it worked for me and it didn't work for her, certain things. And it wasn't until she started to get this knowledge of women's health and women's hormonal balances and just understanding all this stuff that you could do that. Certain people shouldn't be fasting. Kids probably shouldn't be fasting. Pregnant women shouldn't be fasting. You're growing a body. There's a lot of different reasons to be able to fast and to be able to do these things in a way that, supports God's intention for your life and the way your body heals and all those sorts of things. Oh, keep you running around right up here.
Okay, I have two questions. One, just a little more detail on what 5-1-1 means.
5-1-1 is 5 days of intermittent fasting, followed by 1 day of feasting. And when I say feasting, I'm talking, 3 meals a day. By the way, when you eat, you should eat your protein and your fat first on your plate and eat your carbs last. Just a good habit to be in because they burn differently in your body. But 5-1-1 is 5 days of intermittent fasting, 1 day of feasting, 1 day of fasting. And if you're like me and you go dinner to dinner on your 1 day fast, consider pushing it out to 36 hours. Because, like, if you're at 24 hours at 8 p.m., there's nothing in your gut that's being digested. And when you go to bed, the sleeping stacked on top of the fasting, like, supersizes what your body is able to do in terms of repair, cellular repair. You said you had a second question.
Yeah, my second question is, what about headaches? Like, I have migraines, and I feel like something like this would make all that worse. So I'm assuming you're not taking like Advil and Tylenol as you go through this.
No, that's probably a conversation with your doctor about headaches. I don't. I wouldn't be surprised if your headaches went away when you were in an extended fast, but that's just my hunch, because so many things, that present in a non-fasted state present themselves in like a healing way while you're fasted. So Kate's had headaches too, so maybe she can tackle that one.
Yeah, I can maybe speak a little bit just from my personal experience in that I have had migraines from time to time, and then as we began to get, extend our intermittent fasting to, go from 12 hours fasted to 16 hours fasted, and really like you maybe could touch a little bit more on the word inflammation, like systemic inflammation. I think that you could cover that a little bit, but in my experience, my migraines were, symptomatic of systemic inflammation. And as my body began to, respond to intermittent fasting and then longer fasts, the inflammation went down, which meant that, the brain interference went down. And I haven't had a migraine in 5 years. Again, that's my story.
Which has been the period of time that we've been fasting at home.
That's right.
Incorporated that.
That's right.
So Kate brings up a really good point about inflammation. Oops, sorry, lost my machine. The two things that are chronically wrong with Americans, as a general rule in the Western world, is insulin resistance and inflammation. And so it's become such an epidemic in the Western culture that a lot of health practitioners refer to inflammation as inflammaging, right? And so you get more and more of it as you get older and older, and stuff just starts hurting differently. And and if you can tamp down the flames of inflammation and become insulin sensitive instead of insulin resistance. And again, insulin is the hormone response. I've heard it described in all the hormones that interact as it relates to feeding and fasting and doing other things. Inflammation's the bully, insulin's the bully hormone. It's really easy to trigger. You can do it with a handful of almonds, sticking almonds in your mouth, and you think, well, it's not that much, it's not a treat, it's not sugar, whatever. But the fact that you put something into your mouth triggers an insulin response. And when your insulin response is persistently high, you are insulin resistant. And the way to turn that around is to become more sensitive to an insulin response by depriving your body and then just treating it every now and again, right? So you're working your way in and out of triggering insulin response, but also inflammation kind of runs in parallel with insulin. Did that answer your question? Any other questions? Oh.
One quick thing. I know I'm the bully in the room now. Can you talk a little bit from going back to the spiritual discipline about in a fasted state, a longer fasted state, when your body's producing ketones, what happens from a spiritual standpoint? No.
Do you have something specific in mind?
Well, we both have seen that when you're in a deeper state of ketosis, your brain you mentioned that your brain turns on. And I would relate that in when you are specifically seeking God in spiritual matters, that you hear him more clearly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd agree with that.
I answered my own question.
You did. I thought you were trying to stump me.
I might have misheard you, but from what I understood, you said that what breaks someone's fast might not be the same for somebody else.
That's right.
And is that just the spike in insulin? Like what spikes my insulin might not be the same thing that spikes yours? Or how do you tell how do you tell if your fast is broken or not?
Yeah, so really good question. And the short answer is it depends. Sound like a good economist on the one hand, on the other hand. But generally speaking, black coffee won't break somebody's fast. But some people, it breaks your fast. I don't know why. We're all physiologically different, right? Similar, but different. And so you have to experiment a little bit with what breaks your fast and what doesn't break your fast. And so to give you an example of something that does not break a fast for me is if I'm fasted for a while and I just want like a salty taste in my mouth or something, I'll go grab an olive out of the refrigerator, or I'll eat a dill pickle spear. That doesn't break my fast, but it satiates me because it's like my taste buds were looking for something, That doesn't answer your question. You're going to have to experiment with you. As you know, when you do scientific studies, the number of people being studied is N equals. If there are 300 people in the study, it's N equals 300, right? But like so much of this stuff is N equals 1. And you got to figure out what it does for you and how you feel when you do that. There's no meter to tell you that you've broken your fast. But if you're listening to your body, you kind of know when your fast has been broken. I can feel it, but it's typically so so that's thing number one when you break your fast. But the other part is when you break your fast and you want to trigger mTOR, you need to break your fast with at least 30 grams of protein in order to do that. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did somebody else have a question? Got one up here, got one back there.
What are the precautions around being like highly physically active and also wanting to fast, but like making sure that your body is able to sustain itself?
Yeah, so when I was younger, and I used to be a marathoner and lifted weights and did some other stuff, but like we always talked about carb loading. Mm-hmm. And so what that meant to me when I was 26 was, pizza, which is terrible, right? Not the right way to carb load. So the idea behind carb loading is that all carbohydrates turn into sugar in your body. It's a fuel source. But if you've trained your body to be metabolically flexible and to be fat adapted, then you get energy from your fat in your body. And so if you're talking about like extremely competitive sports, you probably need to have that conversation with like a sports nutritionist to talk more deeply about it. But I have persistently heard for just regular people that just want to work out once a day or whatever it is, that if you work out at the end of your fast, you will have more growth hormone available in your body. And if it's an extended fast, you'll have more stem cells in your body. And so it stands to reason that if you're exercising your muscle, that your propensity to grow muscle increases at the end of a fast, right? Does that help?
You want to talk about like glucose guardrails a little bit, just from a numerical standpoint?
Yeah, again, it's probably something you need to get from your doc, but your fasting glucose should be somewhere between 70 and 90, milligrams per deciliter, I think are the units. 70 to 90. If you're much above that, then you've probably got insulin resistance. And they've actually now, just in the last couple of years, used to be you had to be a diabetic in order to get a glucose monitor for your arm. And now there's a lot of health services where you can actually go buy a subscription. And Kate and I have done continuous glucose monitors. And so we've experimented with putting things in my mouth and go, what spikes me, what doesn't spike me, what spikes me and doesn't spike her. And so again, I'm an N of 1, she's an N of 1, we're figuring this out together. But then you can figure out how to optimize your own body's, key measurements. Does that help? What else? Did you have a question? Oh, I thought you raised your hand, sorry. Oh, you got one.
Thank you. I know you said, like, when you started fasting that you were rapidly losing weight after so many months, but you were able to get to, like, an ideal weight. How do you not lose weight while fasting? How do you keep yourself at, like, a healthy weight for
So your body kind of becomes adapted to the fasting lifestyle. So my body's response to fasting 5 years ago is a little bit different than it is right now. And so it takes a lot more for me to lose as much as I want. And frankly, it's like not my objective to lose weight. And so, finding that right balance. And boy, it's talk about a multivariable calculus problem. If you wanted to find out like what's your ideal body weight with bone density and muscle and all that, you could get into DEXA scanning and a lot of very expensive ways to measure your body to figure out what the right thing is for you. But as a general rule, I've just settled on the fact that my ideal body weight's between 170 and 175. And so I try to stay there. And sometimes I creep up over the holidays, you have maybe a little extra eggnog or something like that. And then you come down off the holiday swing, and you're like in January, we did this 6-day fast, because we had enjoyed ourselves over the holidays. So I don't have any intention to live like a Spartan, and it's just like, I want to enjoy life. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. What else? Yes, ma'am.
Here we go. Okay, like if you're on a 5-day fast and you say to come off of it gently with bone broth and eggs, and it should be half of what the feasting should be half of your
Duration of the fast, yeah.
How do you get built up to that 30 grams of protein if you're on bone broth and eggs?
You can get 30 grams of, it's a good question. But you can get 30 grams of protein without eating anything solid. So you can do whey protein, shake.
Like a protein shake or something.
I take amino acids, and that's a whole nother interesting discussion. The benefits of protein compared to the benefits of the individual amino acids that are essential to your body, right? But you can concoct ways to. Because I don't know, what's bone broth for a cup? You remember? 8? Yeah.
Just a point of clarification is that it's the duration of time that you are gentle, not the amount
Oh, okay.
of food that you're gentle. Was that your question?
Yeah, but how do you get,
Yeah, you
to like what your normal would be?
right. You ease if you were fasting for
Just-
3 days.
just- yeah.
Then you're easing back in for a day and a half.
Yeah.
Back to your normal. Is that?
What I took you to mean is that how do you get 30 grams if you're not eating a steak?
Right, because you had said like eggs and bone broth, and
Yeah.
then,
You might eat 8 eggs. What's an egg? 8 grams?
okay.
6 grams, something like that. So
And then there's a debate, because I've been on this journey for a little while now, the caloric. Somebody put me on 1,300 calories. And I came off my 18-6 fasting over the holidays. And I'm having problems getting back on it. That's when I felt my best. I'm on a 12-hour fasting now, but I'm hangry all the time.
yeah.
So they said, well, you're not eating enough calories, you're not eating enough protein.
Yeah.
How do you find that?
I don't want to disparage the medical advice that you're getting, but calories is like the most useless metric. I mean, like 10 calories of Pop-Tarts versus 10 calories of cauliflower. Like, please, I don't. Calorie is a useful measurement of energy, but and I had a couple of years ago when I was working at the White House, like I had this medical doctor that worked for me. And he was like, oh, no, sir, it's all calories in, calories out. And I was like, that is the biggest load of stuff.
Yeah, the
'cause it's-
calories in chocolate is not the same as calories
That's
in a
right.
piece of chicken.
That's right. And so I don't count calories. I eat till I'm satiated,
Okay,
always.
okay.
Always. And I might eat lower calories, but I come through the kitchen and I forage for pumpkin seeds and things that I enjoy, having beef sticks and things like that.
One thing I have found that is working for me, and it's in the Glucose Goddess book, is to start my meal with my greens, then my proteins, then my carbs or my dessert. Which by the time I get to my carbs, a lot of times I don't want that baked potato, or I don't want that,
Yeah.
whatever I'm going to have for dessert, like a yasso popsicle or whatever.
Yeah.
Are there benefits to doing the keto diet on this intermittent?
Yeah. So the kind of dieting that you do, where I've concluded on diets, you got the Mediterranean diet, you have what people call the keto diet, which is just a low carbohydrate diet. You've got the paleo diet, you've got the carnivore diet, you've got all the different diets. Like, I'm just telling you, if God made it, it's good for you, right? Full stop. And like, cycle in between them. Like, if you're eating a Mediterranean diet for 3 weeks, maybe shift over to a carnivore for a week, and then shift over to keto, low carb for a week. The principle that exercises is called hormesis. And so there are different kinds of stressors to your body. One's a hormetic stress, one's a chronic stress, generally. And if you think about hormesis this way, or hormetic stress would be if I go into the gym and I lift weights, and I'm going to lift just enough to really push myself, but not to hurt myself. And then I leave the gym and my body restores, and I'm actually stronger tomorrow than I was today. Right. Because I exercise this principle of hormesis. I didn't overdo it, right? And the same thing applies when you have these different kinds of foods, because different kinds of foods do different things to your body. And so it's an important principle to think through what our ancestors did. And our ancestors, because they didn't have refrigerators and freezers, they ate whatever was available to them today. So it might have been berries, it might have been maybe somebody shot a goose and you're having goose tonight or whatever. But they're seasonally available. And so that's the way we've kind of come to think about it. Go, what's available to us right now that's like regionally, seasonally good for you? Because all those things, these are God made. You know, I mean, you go to the grocery store, stay out of the aisles with all the boxes. Don't buy any of the box stuff, and it's got a little nutrition thing in the middle. It's got like 17 ingredients you can't pronounce. Leave it alone. Go get a piece of meat. There's no sticker on it that says meat, protein. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's no right answer here. I don't think. It's what makes your body feel its best, and you can experiment with that. And maybe you just begin to keep a food log, so that when you're doing keto or you're doing paleo or you're doing the Mediterranean diet or you're doing carnivore. I had a friend of mine who runs a podcast down in Miami. He did the carnivore diet for 90 days. He took a blood test on the front end, full blood panel. 90 days of nothing but meat and fat. He took a blood test at the end of the 90 days. Every single one of his blood markers improved, including, which blew away the doctor. He ended up having a call with the medical officer for this particular testing company because they recommended you not do carnivore to rebuild your gut microbiome. And so he did a stool test and he did blood tests and did all the stuff on the front end, and he did it on the back end, and all of his gut microbiota was improved by like 1,000% just being on a. So I think they're all good. And I'm simple this way as a Christian, like if God put it on earth and, it somehow got to your plate, then it's time to eat it. And it's, it's all this other junk that we've loaded in that causes the problems, I think.
Well, my nurse practitioner at Core Life is on the carnivore, and all his numbers are perfect. I said, well, I think I could do the carnivore.
Yeah.
I like meat.
Yeah. Well, here's another one to explore on YouTube. A lot of people now are talking about a sardine diet.
No.
That's it. There you go.
Yeah.
What other questions? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you were talking about the dry fast and don't brush your teeth and don't take a shower. I was kind of hoping we'd be talking more about the spiritual end of fasting.
Yeah.
And if I want to visit with a friend, and prayer is, I was under the impression fasting is to spend more time with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And when I spend time with friends, I don't want to be unshowered and not brush my teeth.
Yeah.
And so that seemed a little like it was a little legalistic or something like it.
Yeah.
Why that? That doesn't seem to
I
even
might
go
have
with it.
I might have been a little flippant in describing that, so if I was, I apologize. But what the science has shown is that a dry fast triggers greater autophagy than a water fast. And so if your objective is a spiritual one, as you're approaching fasting, then you design your fast around your spiritual objectives. And I think if your objective is for the fast to heal your physical body, consider that, a dry fast is one of the tools in your toolbox. But it does, like if you're not taking
It seems like, what would that do for autophagy?
yeah.
Would that, does it do something to your skin also, that showering or
It's
your
the
mouth cells
deprivation of water and non-absorption of water in your body, because your skin absorbs water and your mouth would too. Yeah, it's been measured. I don't know that I would practice dry fasting with any regularity. I like the idea of supercharging a multi-day fast at the end with like 1 day of a dry fast or 12 hours of a dry fast, something like that. But any number of combinations I think are acceptable. What other questions?
I have found that when I'm fasting, I am more spiritual.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. This is not a one-size-fits-all in any respect. I think spiritually, physically, whatever. But a lot of what I came today, Sam's talked a little bit about the spiritual dimensions of this from the pulpit, and the purpose of today was just to kind of talk through the practicality of how do you get into it, how do you start doing it, what are some best practices, and oh, by the way, it's got all these great physical benefits for you. That are fantastic. So I appreciate your attention. Any other questions, comments? I'll hang around for a few minutes if you want to talk. Thank you, guys.